All right, everybody. Now we are recording class. I've just gone over the agenda. And as I said earlier, we're going to pause from the writing of the final papers that are due Thursday. And I'm going to talk about the upcoming banking workshop. Now, several of you have done this before. So Fernanda just mentioned she remembers the acronym FDIC that we'll go over later in class. Several of you remember last semester when First National Bank hosted a banking workshop. Fernanda, can you tell us a little bit about what we did and what it was all about? Just some of what you recall?
Yes, it's a good slide because helping I open the bank and the function, the people and the bank. I think it's a good information about the open the account.
Okay. So Fernanda recalls, Fernanda, you're giving it a positive review. You remember it was good information at the banking workshop. I'm going to call on some other people. Guadalupe, do you remember the banking workshop from last semester?
I do.
All right. Can you tell everybody a little bit about it?
Yes, it was about how to open an account with different, sorry for the noise background. It was about about other, what are the requirements to open an account. And we also talk about interest rate and a little more of credit scores. It's a wide we see a wide knowledge of what is a bank, how does it work, how can you benefit from the bank in those.
Yes, exactly. I'm looking at the video panel here and I'm trying to see, does anybody else who was here last semester for the bank workshop want to share what they remember about it? All right, no problem. So what the bank workshop is, it's given by not teachers, but it's a workshop hosted by the First National Bank, and that's a smaller bank in the greater Boston area. They're around the country. They have several branches, and they tap into this community of foreign people who are oftentimes underserved, neglected in terms of banking. So very, very similar to what we learned last year with the, does everybody remember, I'm sorry, not last year, last week, does everybody remember redlining from the last class?
Yes.
Yeah, does everybody remember the Federal Housing Authority?
Yes.
All right. What were some of the practices of redlining that were done by the Federal Housing Authority that we learned about in the last class?
They limited or they choose the locations gave to people, what is the word for that? Money for buy a house.
Yes,
but,
excellent.
What is the word for that?
A mortgage?
That one, yeah.
Right. So try to say it again. The Federal Housing Authority would give mortgages to
people for buy house, but the redlining was the places where the federal decide don't give the money for people for buy there, because for them is really risk, and the risk it's about the race people.
The race people, you're right. So what you're saying is white people would get loans to buy houses and essentially become homeowners. And they were concentrated in certain areas. People of color, Black and Latinx people, would deliberately not be given loans. And essentially, and that's the way we could describe the situation. A neighborhood like JP, why is it that one community, a community of people of color, were primarily renters, and communities of white middle-class people were generations of homeowners? So essentially, the First National Bank, if we look at redlining in the FHA and the history of these practices of discrimination, what this organization that we partner with, the First National Bank, what they're doing is they want to practice this. It's called financial empowerment. So the idea of these banking workshops, they're very important because it's instituting financial empowerment to underserved communities. What do I mean by financial empowerment? That's not my words. That's what the First National Bank uses. What's this, Estefania, what do you think financial empowerment is?
It's gave the opportunity to people to have money, but in this case, it's just white people.
Yes, well, in the cases of redlining and the practice, the redlining done by the FHA, it was primarily white people who would benefit from financial empowerment. Another vocab word from last week, who remembers this? Compounded interest. That was a tricky word one. Who from last week's lesson, what is compounded interest? Guadalupe, do you remember compounded interest?
It was related to their earnings of
Yes.
money.
Yeah. Well, what exactly, what's interest and what is compounded interest?
The money when you, the example that we saw is when you have $100 and 20 years you can have $1 million. Why? Because if you save that money on your bank, you can have interest and the inflations. You can earn. You can have earnings.
Excellent. The examples that Guadalupe was pointing out that we used last week was a family that is exercising financial empowerment. Oftentimes, they inherit generational wealth. So if your mother and your father have property that was given to them by their parents, and then they have generational wealth, they could enjoy the benefits of that property going up through perhaps a process of gentrification, the property value rises, or they could sell that property and have that extra money lying around and then invest and reinvest it in a new property somewhere else. So generations that have benefited from compounded interest generally are benefiting from financial empowerment, and essentially will have more money and more opportunities. So the idea of financial empowerment is to get people to start accessing services out there and start making their money work for them. So the ability to access the system, the benefits of the system, so it benefits more people, not just a few people, essentially. So that's why I wanted to relate this to the topics of gentrification and land ownership, because it's very, very important, financial empowerment for underserved communities. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave the slide and I'm going to go to Google Classroom. And here I am. I'm minimizing the slides So there, and I'm going to Google Classroom. There it is. So here's our Google Classroom page. Last week, I posted these PowerPoint slides. And for people who took part in the banking workshop last semester, well, it was last year, it was 2021. You will remember these slides exactly, word for word. So I'm gonna, when you go to Google Classroom and you open them up, Fernanda, does this look familiar?
Yes, the similar.
It's not only similar, it's exactly the same.
Exactly.
It is like exactly the same. Now, I don't work in finance. I'm not a banker, I'm a teacher. So this is one of the things that kind of drives me nuts is that the First National Bank, when they give this banking workshop, they've been using exactly the same slides every semester, I think since 2020. And it drives me a little crazy. But
I watch in library too.
Okay, great. Yeah, they do exactly the same. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, and a lot of the people are, sometimes they're younger, they're volunteering their time. They're not getting paid to do the workshop. They're great people, but it can seem like a little bit sometimes like they're it's just because it's just a person reading words on a slide like this. Hello, let's get to know each other. It's oftentimes like, oh my God, this guy's just reading words on a slide. They're just like a little bit of a robot. So as a teacher, I'm thinking, come on, mix it up, make it new, make it fresh. But my criticism aside, just because you may have seen something before doesn't mean there's not something new to learn. So what I want everybody to work on in this class today to get ready for the workshop tomorrow are these two slides, slide 13 and slide 27. So of course you can read the entire slide and then you'll be ready to listen to the presentation tomorrow. So when you hear them speaking, you'll say, oh, I know that word. I know that word too. Oh, yes, I'm ready. And you're taking notes. You're saying, oh, I understand it a little better. That's great. But I think the most useful vocabulary for this class is on slide 13 and slide 27. So I'm going to show everybody that right now. So if I scroll down and it comes up, if you look, does everybody see the bottom of my screen right here? That's how you can tell. It'll open up, it'll switch from PowerPoint to Google Slides. They're basically the same thing, a few differences. But when you go scrolling down, there's slide 8, slide 9. So you scroll all the way down, aha, slide 13. So in terms of what I think this class can use the most, slide 13, services of the bank. These are some of the more useful concepts. These particular services, this is the vocabulary that I think will be very useful for everyone in terms of not only this class, but also life. Lending money, convenience and accessibility, growing savings. So growing savings, that's another way to say compounded interest. Keeping money safe, that sort of thing. So that's slide 13, services of the bank. And slide 27, I'm going to scroll down here to slide 27. There's 26. All right. In terms of different ways you might save money, using these services, you want to know the difference between a normal savings account, a certificate of deposit, a 401k, and an IRA. So those vocab words, I think for everybody, everyone should be very, very familiar with. So when you've got some money, you got that job that you want, you've got some money, what's the best way to get your money to work for you and develop compounded interest? There's CDs, 401ks, IRAs, and normal savings accounts. So Those two slides, 13 and 27, those I think are the most applicable to for this class that we will use. So now that I've showed you this, you can look at it on your own. Let's go back to my slides, and enough of me talking. Let's get everybody else to talk. All right, so before we go into breakout rooms, I like to use this activator question that I used in previous classes. Banking in the US. How is banking in the US similar or different to banking where you have lived before? Because we've got a diversity of experience in this classroom. You've lived in other countries. What's it like using a bank in different places you've lived? Is it exactly the same as the US, or is it a different experience? Take a minute to think about it. Don't rush to answer. Take a minute. And then when you're ready, just give me the hand raising emoji. Okay, Carl is ready to go. Take it away, Carl.
Okay, thank you, teacher. Hi, everyone.
Hello, Carl.
I think we we don't have to think a lot about it. It's very, very different, the banking system here in US, because not any person can afford to it, especially if you don't have like a social security number, something like that, no? And otherwise, in other countries, well, right in my country or other country I used to live before, like Mexico, you don't really need, if you have, you can open your own account by yourself with your identification, or if you're working, the job can give you a letter, something like that, information that they're going to deposit you, and they will open one for you automatically.
That is a good distinction. Thank you so much, Carl. And it made me write something up in the upper left-hand corner. Yes, it's true. In a lot of other countries, you don't have to have that social security number that we use in the US. That is an American distinction. I'm going to go to Marvat in a minute, but does anybody know what those three letters I wrote on the upper left-hand corner are? I'm going to send it to.
This is a number for people who can have the identification, or they don't have social security, but they still working in the US. They have that TIN for filing taxes.
Yes, yes, yes,
the
yes.
IT number.
Yes. All right. So what Rosa just said is absolutely correct. It's very tricky, and it's not always explained properly at every bank, but you can get a bank account without a social security number. Here is how you can do it. There's a TIN and there's also an EIN. Oh, actually, no, that's for people who have a small business. I'm sorry. TIN, here we go. I'm going to send everybody some information right now in WhatsApp. So if you don't have a social security number and you need one to get a bank account, here is the workaround. Okay, you got to get a TIN. Here we go. Okay, take a look on WhatsApp. There it is. Okay, everybody should see it. I just sent the IRS information.
Yes.
All right, so there it is, and it's TIN is the same thing as ITIN. That's individual taxpayer identification number. So even if you don't have a social, but you're working and paying taxes, you can open up a bank account with a TIN. Unfortunately, it takes a while to process it. So if you don't have a bank account and you need one, get a TIN and then just walk into any FDIC insured bank and they should be able to open an account for you. I'm glad you brought that up, Carl. So yes,
Sure.
look up, so Carl and anybody else, look up TIN. Yes, Francelis.
I believe you can also use your passport number to open an account in US.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Passport number. I've never tried that. Well, of course, I'm a citizen here. That's the way it was when I lived abroad. I would use my US passport number to have a foreign bank account. Okay. Madhavat, you've had your hand up waiting patiently for so long.
Yes, no problem. In fact, the banking process in my country different from the USA. About the saving account and checking account is the same, but the debit card we use in my country for a couple of years, just recently, not from long time. And the mortgage process also differ because there is restricted sometimes to employ and depend on the salary. There is a limited mortgage for some people, not for all people. Besides the loan for a small business, there is a little money give the bank to the small business. But in America, the banking process is more wider and more developed than in my country.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. All right, Carl and Marvat, those are two great examples of comparing and contrasting banking in the US to banking in other countries. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to look at the number here. What's a good number? Yes, I'll make 3 breakout rooms, and I'd like everybody to share in smaller groups their answer to this question. So how is banking in the US similar or different to banking where you have lived before? Carl and Madhavat argue that in their experience, banking in the US is quite different. Other students might find a lot of similarities. For instance, often a lot of our students from the DR, they oftentimes say it's identical to the US. But we shall see. Let's go into smaller groups right now and share your stories. Banking in the US versus other countries you've lived. I'm going to create the breakout rooms right now. Here we go. Let's make 3 breakout rooms. Okay, here we go. Everybody knows the question you want to answer for discussion?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Excellent. Great, great, great. Here we go. Breakout room time. Okay, so that was a good breakout room session. Now I'm doing what I like to do before the banking workshop every semester. I am using the whiteboard to give a demonstration of how banks work. Many of you remember this before, so if you remember this part of the lesson before, you can take the lead. Who could tell me, how do banks make money? A bank is essentially a business, right? How in the world do they function as a business?
They invest your money in some business, and they earn a lot of profit for this money.
Exactly. Let's say Inmar, I'm going to use your example. Inmar, let's say you have, I'm going to take $5,000. Inmar decides he's going to put his money into the Bank of El Centro. Now, Inmar, would you like to create a checking, a savings, a CD, IRA? What would you like? What services of our bank would you like?
Saving account.
Okay, savings account.
Yeah.
And now a savings account is going to give you some interest. Let's say you keep your $5,000
Yeah.
in that bank, you'll get every month, you get maybe 5,000, it'll be a little bit, you'll have a little bit, depending on the interest rate. So you'll get a dollar cut throughout the year, you'll get a few dollars. I mean, you're not going to make a ton of money, but it's something. So how in the world does the Bank of El Centro make money if we take Inmar's $5,000 and then we're actually giving him his interest later? Anybody else want to? I know Inmar's got the answer. Anyone else want to give it a shot? Investments. We could do that. So what are some types of investments our bank could?
Because the bank give the people loan, there is interest on the loan.
Exactly. So Marvat, I'm going to use an example. So let's say Inmar's money, let's forget the number. If Inmar puts money into the bank, and so does Estefania puts her money into the bank, and so does Francelis. So I've got all of your money. You must really trust the Bank of El Centro. So if we've got all of these people's money, they trust that they can let their money grow with interest if they bring it to this bank. Marvat, you want to buy a car, and I'm going to use that same number. We're going to loan you $5,000, and every month you're going to pay us back with premiums. Maybe it's, I don't know, $500 over the course of however many months. So each time you are paying us back for your car loan, the bank is making interest. We are also going to take Inmar, Estefania, and Francelis's money, and Helen wants to buy a house. So Helen's house is going to be $300,000. We own the house. It's not Helen's house until she pays us back. And each month, she's going to be paying us back a lot of interest. Right now, those interest rates are very high. So if she gets a good deal with about 4% interest, that's a very high interest rate now. I mean, that's a good deal now. Or if she gets a bad deal, which is like 5, 6, or even 7% interest, we're going to be collecting a lot of money every month. So if we are for Marvat's car and Helen's house, we also might take Inmar, Estefania, and Francelis's money, and we might put it in securities. Who knows what those are?
Deposit?
What are securities? Not deposits. What are other ways, more risky, more risk involved, more risk?
The security is when my money is safe.
No.
Insurance, teacher?
No.
Like a password?
What are other ways people invest money that are more risky? I'm using, securities have risk.
Insurance.
No, there's risk, but I'm not talking, what are other ways people grow their money? Think of trading. People trade these.
Inversions, teacher.
Stocks, bonds, these things.
Okay.
So does everybody know what a stock is?
Yes.
So stocks, owning shares of companies. Bonds, that means loaning money to governments or to corporations. So all of the money that people, let's say if Guadalupe, Inmar, Estefania, and Francelis all give the Bank of El Centro all of their money. The Bank of El Centro is not is all of their money sitting in a big building behind a big brick wall? Or is it actually in many, many different places at the same time?
Many different places in the same time.
Exactly. So your money is actually doing something. This is what makes banking quite fascinating. Has anyone ever felt like they have to be at two places at once or three places at once? You're in class, but you're also taking care of your kids, or maybe you're going to work, or your money is doing that all the time. So your money is actually in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 places at exactly the same time. So the reason I'm making this point is this: when you put your money in the bank, it's not physical cash in the physical building. Your bank is taking your money and lending it out, investing it in different places in order for the bank to make money and pay you the interest that you trust them to build. That's how a bank works. It's not so much an institution that will hold your money physically. It's an institution that will keep your money circulating and moving in different places at the same time. So don't think of it as your money standing still. Your money is actually floating around in multiple places. So when the analogy I gave, when Francelis puts her money in the bank is not letting it stay there. The bank is actually loaning it out to Marvat to buy her car, and then Marvat will pay it back with interest that will be more money, and some of that interest will go back to Francelis or back to Estefania. So your money is all over the place. So does anybody see a potential problem with the system? If the money keeps moving, everything goes okay.
You can have a lot of risk if the bank doesn't receive the money that he lent.
There we go. So yes, what if something happens? What if the bank is not getting the money back? Or the bank is making risky investments. They put it all in a company that disappeared, that is not making, they put all it in securities that fall apart. That they put it, the bank makes poor decisions. Or what if Guadalupe and Enmar and Estefania decide they don't like this bank? So Guadalupe, what if you put all your money in the bank and then you want to take it out?
Yeah,
Can you take it
I'm
out?
going to look for another bank and
Right.
take my money out.
Can you take all your money out?
Yeah, if
Yeah.
I don't like that bank, I will take it out.
But what if Guadalupe talks to Inmar and he doesn't like the bank either? And they both want to take the money out.
It's going to be a hole.
And then what happens when Estefania, Guadalupe, and Francelas all want to take their money out at exactly the same time?
It's going to be a really huge hole for them.
There's a problem. There's a big
This
problem.
is a problem.
This is a problem. Now, this happened a lot in this country in the 1930s. And this was an era called the Great Depression. I'm going to show you a short reenactment of what was happening in the 1930s. But first, I'm going to make sure I optimize this for sound. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, it's optimized for sound. Here we go. Okay.
America boomed.
So here is America circa 1930.
In 1929, $6 billion of goods are bought on credit.
Whoop. Pardon me.
America boomed.
Okay, here it is. So I'm going to show you a reenactment of a bank run in 1930.
A year after the stock market crash, America's economy.
And we'll take a break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask everybody to describe what's happening.
December 1930. The streets of New York are quiet. It's been a year since the stock market crash of 1929, but only 2% of the population owns stocks. The other 98% get on with their lives. Until today. This man is about to shake America's confidence in its banks to its very core. He's put his money in his local bank, the Bank of United States. A bank that has only hours left to exist. But a newspaper article questions his bank's stability. This is the moment that begins a chain reaction